Welcome to the moon tonight. It is Saturday night, January the 20th, 2013. We are imaging the moon with a 5-inch Skywatcher Maksudov Cassegrain telescope. And we're using a Logitech C525 HD webcam. As you can see on the screen, we have an image of the moon, which we're in the Southern Highlands right now. And as you can see by the image that's before you, there's a lot of boiling, a lot of moving around, and that's called seeing. And right now this seeing is very, very bad. On a scale of 1 to 5, this would be the poorest. Scale runs at 1 bad, 2 is poor, 3 is average, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. And I've seen videos from a fellow down in Texas who images the moon, and he complains when he has seen that's at about 3, which I consider very good. Unfortunately, I'm up here in Connecticut, and we do not get very many good nights imaging the moon. Seeing is really a tough thing here in Connecticut. And one thing that's misunderstood about seeing is, and let me move this image up just a bit before we lose where we are here. At the bottom of your screen you can see the crater Clavius, which is about 136 miles in diameter. It's just coming into sunlight. In fact, right now it's sitting right on the terminator, the line between daylight and night on the moon, and you can see some of the peaks of craters that are inside Clavius are just starting to come into view. But anyway, back to the seeing I was talking about. A lot of people think when you go outside and see a real clear, crisp night, real crystalline clear and cold, that's the best for doing astronomy. Well, it is in a way if you're going to do faint galaxies. And faint clusters and nebula. It's great for that. But when you go put a telescope on the moon and the planets on a very, very clear night, this is what you get. This boiling effect. It's just caused by the mixing of a little warm air, little pockets of air, and it mixes with this real cold, crisp air, and you get very, very poor seeing. By the way, my name is Jim Hannon. I am imaging from a small town called Terryville. We are in the foothills of, right at the base of the foothills of Litchfield County in northwestern Connecticut. And it does get very cold here. Right now I'm imaging from inside a small shed attached to a garage. And right now the temperature outside is, I don't know, probably in the 20s. We're expecting the weather to get down to single numbers and even 0 during the week. So it's a great advantage to have this little shed where we can run the wires out to the telescope and image and watch the screen from inside a nice warm building. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is actually I'm going to move down a little bit here and take a look at some of these other features on the moon. Are the craters themselves. Right now we're in the Southern Highlands of the moon. This is a very, very cratered and mountainous region of the moon. And if you move down farther, well, actually the north is to the left in this image, and we'll get down there in a little bit. And you can see there's a huge difference in the mountains and the mare of the moon, which are flat lava flow and plains, and there are very few craters there. One of the things I want to talk about was, and let me see if I can find something that we can use as an example. I'm going to move up right there, and near the center now is the crater Tycho. And you can see in its center, and I'm going to lose it here, I've got to bring this back down, it's drifting. I have 2 mounts that I can use. One is an Atlas EQG mount, which is a very, very good mount, but it does not like this cold weather. It'll freeze up and not work properly in the cold weather. So I have a second mount an Atlas, I'm sorry, an Orion Skyview Pro, it works much better in this cold weather, but it is not as responsive, and it gives me some problems as far as control. Now again, see that crater in the center? That is Tycho, and there is a central peak in there. If you can see that peak in the center of that crater, this bothers a lot of people not familiar with astronomy. They look at that, and I've seen and even heard some people look at that and say, well, that's not natural. That's got to be man-made. It's got to be alien-made. I've heard them referred to as signal towers or antenna towers that were built there by aliens. Well, I'm not of that belief at all. I come at this purely from a scientific point of view. And actually, central peaks and craters are a characteristic of lunar impact. Craters of the moon are caused by meteor and asteroid impact, and they were studied very heavily in the 30s, 40s, 50s, leading up to the Apollo era in the 1960s. There was a lot of question about how they were formed. It was determined that most of them come from impact, asteroid impact, and the result of a lot of these is this central peak in the center. Well, you ask the question, if you have an asteroid hit the moon and leave a big hole, how in the devil do you get a pile of rocks or a mountain in the middle? And let me see if I can just bring this back up a little bit, a little more. Bring it back over here to the center. And you can answer that question very easily by yourself. Just take a walk to your local pond, nice quiet pond, maybe a foot or at least more deep, with nice still water, not a rushing water like a stream, but a pond. Pick up a stone about the size of your hand or a little bit bigger and toss it in the air and watch it fall into the water. Watch very carefully what happens, because the same thing that happens here is what happens on the moon. When the moon is hit by a large object, like an asteroid, the surface of the moon actually acts like water for a brief time, a very short period of time. So watch that rock hit the water. The first thing you get is a huge splash. The water sprays out and you get this ray pattern that you'll see a lot on the moon. But also you'll see a large gap where the rock has hit the water and splashed that water away. And there's a huge gap there, huge hole. So what happens is gravity's not happy now. It rushes the water all around back into the center to fill that gap. And when that water hits in the center, coming in from 360 degrees all around, it hits in the center where the rock has entered the water, causes a secondary splash, which sends a pile of water straight up in the air. That is the mechanism that causes the central peaks on the moon. It's the exact same thing, and we're starting to drift away here. I'll pull it back up a little bit. What happens is that column of water, if you watch it, falls then back down to the surface of the pond, and of course then it smooths all out because we're here on Earth with the water. But on the moon, you have this pile of rock and debris that's been thrown up, and it falls back down into the center, and it leaves this pile of rocks or mountain in the center. Well, you might say, well, look at all these other craters that don't have impacts, peaks. And you might ask, why don't they have them? Well, the answer is not all impacts cause central peaks. It has to be the right mass. The speed of the object has a lot to do with it. The angle of entry has a lot to do with it. There's a lot of things that have a lot to do with it. For example, if you're, well, when I'm talking here, I'm going to start moving down to the north side of the moon a little bit. Just think, as you're driving down the highway, you're doing 70 miles an hour, and you approach a car that's in your lane, that's in front of you, and he's doing 65. You approach him, and if you don't stop, you're going to run into the back of his car. Well, you're doing 70, he's doing 65. The impact speed is only going to be 5 miles an hour. There's another nice impact crater right there just above center. So the impact speed is only 5 miles an hour. Now, if you are traveling at opposite directions, completely opposite directions, he's headed north, you're headed south, he's doing 65, you're doing 70, and you hit head on, then the impact speed is 135 miles per hour. So that's a huge difference. So all that comes into play. Speed, angle of impact, mass of the object hitting the moon. So that is the reason for the central mountains on the moon. And here we have some nice examples. Almost right in the center is the crater, and I have a real rough time with the pronunciation of this one. It looks like Arcazella, something close to the Arcazella. 59 miles in diameter. That's the crater with the nice central peak in it. Just to the left of that is the crater Alphonse. That's 71 miles in diameter. And farther over left, and just almost out of the frame, is the crater Ptolemaeus, and that is 93 miles in diameter. One thing you see here is I have some very severe vignetting, it looks like, with this setup. As I said, I'm using a Logitech C535 camera, and I hope to update that very shortly to a C910 or a C920. It should really improve that situation a lot. Also, later on, I hope to have access to a 10-inch. Not too many years ago, when I had my backyard observatory before 5 back surgeries and getting a little too old to stay in the house and moving out and losing the observatory, I had this 10-inch in the observatory. So I have access to that now. It's stored at actually a friend's house who's using it. I've given use of the scope to him. And I hopefully bring that into play later on. Here you can see this image here. Seeing the moon seems to have settled down a little bit. Looks like seeing for the moment has gotten somewhat better. That's a real nice view of those. That connects a bunch of craters there. But anyway, that 10-inch, it's only an f4, meaning it's only a 40-inch focal length. It's designed for hunting out faint galaxies and clusters. Not really good for the moon. That black dot, by the way, is a piece of dust. It's on the eyepiece. I need to get that cleaned off. Next time we'll get that out of the way. That doesn't belong there naturally. Don't worry, it's not a UFO. So I hope to get that into use later on and get much closer views. Right now I'm using a 21 millimeter eyepiece. It gives roughly 75 power with the instrument I'm using now. But I'm zoomed in all the way with this zoom, so it's probably up the power to about 140. Let's continue on down to the north here and see what else we could run into. I wanted to show you the straight wall on the moon. And I had it earlier. There it is. Okay, it's coming up. It's right now. It's just passing that black dot. I got to stop it. There it goes. I got a hold of it again. It's that mount again with a delay in that mount. See that slash that's just right here, that black dot now that I keep on losing control of and bringing it past. I'm going to try to bring it up and stop it. Again, too much. Really tough to control this mount. It doesn't like to settle down like my good Atlas does. There we go. I think I got it. There's that darkish gash looking line right in the center. That is the straight wall. The little crater just below it is the crater Burt. The straight wall is 73 miles long, but it's probably only about 900 feet high. And right now, the sun angle is kind of high in that area of the moon, and so it doesn't stand out real well. When it's right on the terminator, it's very impressive and stands out. It looks like a dark graphite pencil line on the moon when it's in that condition. But right now, the sun angle is a little bit too high, and it does not show up as well. That crater Burt, to give you an idea of scale here, is 10 miles in diameter. So you can see it's rather small looking here, but still, that's only 10 miles. That's it's not that big. So we'll continue on down here, go a little farther to the north, and you can see again there's some nice examples of craters with central rims, central peaks, mountains. And then, of course, you can see those other craters up above that, which are completely flat-floored. Those are pretty good-sized craters. Some of these, when they're made, though, occurred back when lava flow was still going on the moon. And after impact, lava would come in and fill any, anything that was left on the floor of the crater. If there was any kind of a central peak, and if you had enough lava flow, it would cover everything up. We'll continue on down here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. We're coming up on the crater. That crater is Eratosthenes. Then that mountain range that you see running up the center is part of the Alpine Valley, the Apennine Mountains on the moon, more popularly called the Alps. Let me see if we can follow that up a little bit and get a little more of that mountain range in view. This mount is not the easiest to control. There we go. Okay, there's that big crater just coming into view. To the right of the Alps is the crater Archimedes. That mountain range between Archimedes and right up against the base of that mountain range was actually the landing site for Apollo 15. If I had means of zeroing in a little closer, I could actually show the exact landing site. But it is almost, if you make a clock out of this image and just go to the 9 o'clock position from Archimedes, the biggest round, flat floored crater in there, that would be the landing site of the Apollo 15. And let's see, we'll continue up a little more here. I don't want to make this too long. This is actually my first attempt at doing one of these videos, and it's more of a test than anything. I'm a little disappointed with the vignetting I'm getting. That kind of looking through a hole here and having a tunnel look. I wasn't expecting that to be that bad. For some reason, it's worse than I thought. Until I can get this camera changed out, which I hope to do shortly. Well, I guess we're going to have to put up with that. And I'm going the wrong way as usual with that mount. Let's try to bring this down a little bit and follow that over. There's the flat mar that we're coming into. I've got to check myself and make sure I'm right here. But that's Mar Serenitatis over here on the left-hand side. And notice that streaking in there. That's actually caused by impacts like we talked about. Remember that splash of water throwing out water in all directions? Well, that's a splash of lunar debris thrown out all over the moon. We can try bringing some of that out try changing some of these camera settings while we have it there to see if we can increase the color intensity. It doesn't do an awful lot. Contrast will bring up a little bit. That kind of just darkens it. It does accent the ray pattern a little bit. Gain just blows it out. We don't want to do that. And the exposure is going to do the same. That just blows it out. That's no good. But again, it's just unfortunate. The scene is just horrible here tonight. But yeah, that is Mar Serenitatis there. And if we come back over here, and that's really blowing out. That brightness is really overdone here. Let's see if I can do a little something with that. Contrast brightness. Let's bring the brightness down. There we go. We can bring it down some. There, the color, you can see that color, blue color around the outside. That's not real. That's forced from trying to turn the color up a little too high. We'll turn this color down some. That's a pretty nice image there. But anyway, I think maybe we better think about cutting this off here. I hope in the future to have some better images and show you some more nice things on the moon. The next thing I'd really like to get into is back when we started, we were at the Lunar Highlands. All those craters. Just think back in the 1830s, 1840s, there was no photography. We had observers that made maps by drawing the moon, and there's some real good history there. Next time maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. There were a couple of fellows who they worked real well together, and there were a couple that really went to war with each other, believing their work was better than the other fellows. But we'll leave that for another day. So with that, I'm going to end this for this evening and say clear skies, good health, and hope to see you the next time.